Billionaire sees waitress help a disabled boy. She didn't know that it is his son. What he does next changes her life. The rain came down in relentless sheets, pounding against the cracked pavement of Franklin Avenue, turning it into a shimmering, uneven mirror that caught the flickering glow of streetlights. The old buildings lining the street sagged in the dark, their peeling walls bearing the weight of decades long forgotten. Nestled among them was Franklin Glow, a modest diner with a buzzing neon sign casting a faint orange-yellow light, fragile but warm. Inside, Maya Jackson wiped the counter one last time, her sun-kissed hands moving slowly over the scarred wood. Sweat clung to her rich brown skin after a grueling 12-hour shift, but her eyes still sparkled, as if exhaustion could never quite reach the core of who she was. It was past 11, and the diner should have been closed, but Maya wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't the type to turn her back on someone, not when the world outside had already done enough to knock people down. Through the fogged-up window, she froze. A small figure sat under the rain, a boy in a wheelchair, its rusted frame creaking and handles worn thin. His dark hair stuck to his forehead, a tattered jacket doing little against the biting cold. He clutched a threadbare blanket, his small hands trembling. Maya frowned, setting her rag down. She pushed the door open without a second thought, shivering as the wind slapped her face. But she didn't care. "Hey, little one," she called, her voice soft like a lullaby, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy flinched, then looked up. His blue eyes widened, startled, wary, searching. I'm waiting for my dad," he whispered, his voice nearly lost to the drumming rain. Maya scanned the street. Franklin Avenue was deserted, save for the dim flicker of a pawn shop sign across the road. Tires hissed faintly against wet asphalt. In the distance, "Where's your dad?" She pressed, concern creeping into her tone. He shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter. "He told me to wait here. He's on a call." Maya exhaled, her breath clouding in the frigid air. She'd seen too many nights like this. Kids left waiting for someone who didn't show, abandoned to the cold and the dark. "You can't. Stay out here," she said, offering a warm smile. "Come inside with me, okay? It's warm, and I've got something good for you." He hesitated, then nodded faintly. Maya took the wheelchair's handles, pushing him into the diner. The heat hit them instantly, wrapping around them with the scent of toasted bread and slightly burnt coffee. She guided him to a booth near the radiator, draping a dry towel over his shoulders before kneeling to meet his eyes. "On Maya," she said, flashing a wide grin. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Ethan," he mumbled, sniffing, his fingers curling around the towel's edge. "That's a strong name," Maya nodded. "You hungry?" Ethan gave a small nod. She didn't wait for more. She was already moving to the kitchen, grabbing a fresh sourdough loaf and slicing it with practiced ease. Minutes later, she set a steaming plate before him, a golden grilled cheese sandwich, crisp and gooey, paired with a bowl of tomato soup. "Here you go," she said, tucking a napkin into his lap. "This one's on me." Ethan's eyes lit up as he took his first bite, cheese stretching in long, sticky strings. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he murmured, his voice tinged with awe. Maya chuckled, but a pang twisted inside her. A kid this small shouldn't be out in the rain, shouldn't have that weary look in his eyes, like he'd already carried too much. What she didn't know was that someone watched from across the street. A sleek black Bentley idled in the shadows, its tinted windows reflecting the diner's neon glow. Inside, Victor Grayson sat in silence, his sharp gray eyes locked on the scene. He'd told Ethan to wait near the diner just a few minutes while he handled an urgent call with investors. But the call had dragged on. The rain had started, and those minutes stretched longer than he planned. He saw Maya step out, wheel Ethan inside. And when Ethan smiled, his first real smile of the night, something tightened in Victor's chest. He didn't speak, just gripped his phone harder, his mind already turning, calculating. The warmth of Franklin glow hugged them like a blanket, the air thick with the comforting smells of buttered toast and coffee that had sat too long on the burner. Ethan swung his legs under the table, the towel still draped over his narrow shoulders, his fingers warming around the edges of the steaming grilled cheese. Maya leaned against the counter, watching him with a small smile. "So, you're a messy eater, huh?" she teased, wiping a smear of tomato soup from his chin with a napkin. Ethan grinned, his blue eyes flickering with something brighter than they'd been outside. "It's really good," he said, then hesitated. "I like drawing. Maybe I could draw this sandwich sometime." Maya laughed, a sound that bounced off the diner's worn walls. "A sandwich masterpiece? You're the dirtiest little artist I've ever met." She liked how his face softened when he talked, how the guarded edge in his expression melted just a little. "What else do you draw?" "Buildings," he said quietly, taking another bite. "Tall ones, like the ones my dad works in." She nodded, filing that away. But before she could ask more, the door swung open. Cold air rushed in, followed by a woman in jeans and a faded hoodie, blonde hair tucked under a baseball cap. She didn't belong here, not because of her clothes, but because of the way she moved, sharp, deliberate, like she'd already sized up the room in a single glance. Maya straightened, her instincts flaring. She'd worked this gig long enough to spot someone who wasn't here for the coffee. The woman Claire, though Maya didn't know her name yet, zeroed in on Ethan, crouching beside him with a smile. Too smooth to be real. "Hey, champ," she said, her voice light but rehearsed. "Time to go. Your ride's waiting." Ethan frowned, wiping his mouth with the napkin Maya had given him. "But I haven't finished my milk." Claire tilted her head, her smile unwavering. "You can take it with you. Come on. Let's not keep them waiting." Maya's gut twisted. She'd seen too many moments like this. People shuffled off, dismissed, no questions asked. But she wasn't the type to stay quiet. She folded her arms, studying the woman. "You know him?" Claire's smile didn't falter, but her shoulders tightened just enough to notice. "Yeah," she said smoothly. "I'm his aunt." Maya didn't blink. She turned to Ethan, softening her voice. "That true, sweetheart?" Ethan hesitated a beat too long. Claire's jaw twitched. Maya knew that pause. She'd grown up in a world where hesitation could mean everything, where you learned to read fear in the smallest flinches. This woman wasn't his aunt. She crouched beside Ethan, meeting his uncertain eyes. "You good, baby? You want to go with her?" Ethan glanced between them, his small hands clenching the napkin until his knuckles whitened. "She's here for my dad," he mumbled. "I guess I have to." Maya exhaled, her chest tight. She'd been here before, wanting to push, to demand more, to make sure this kid was safe. But she knew the rules. A black woman asking too many questions could turn heads the wrong way. Still, she wouldn't let him leave empty-handed. She walked to the counter, grabbed a chocolate chip cookie, and wrapped it in wax paper. "For the road," she said, sliding it into his hand. His fingers curled around it, and he gave her a small, real smile. "Thanks, Maya. You're the best." She forced a grin, but something gnawed at her as Claire wheeled him toward the door. The tension between them hung thick, unspoken. Just before stepping into the rain, Claire glanced back. Not a word, just a look. Maya recognized it, a warning. Across the street, the Bentley's headlights flashed as Claire approached. The rear doors swung open before she could knock, and Victor Grayson stepped out, his broad frame cutting through the neon glow. He was 46, a man who'd built Grayson Enterprises on precision and ruthlessness, his gray eyes sharp as steel. Ethan was inside, buckled into the back seat before Victor turned to Claire. "Well?" Claire pushed back her hood, exhaling. "She's sharp. Didn't buy the aunt story, almost called me out on it." Victor's expression didn't shift. "But she let him go." "She didn't have a choice," Claire said pointedly. "You know how it is. A black woman making a scene? She'd be the one in trouble, not me." Victor's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. He'd seen it. The moment Maya stepped into the rain without hesitation. The way she'd spoken to Ethan like he mattered. He'd watched people grovel and scheme for his money, but she hadn't even known who Ethan was. She'd just helped. That made her different, dangerous, even. He slid into the car, his voice low. "I want everything on her name, address, background. On my desk by morning." Claire hesitated. "Sir, by morning," he repeated, fastening his seatbelt. The Bentley pulled away, the diner shrinking in the rear view, but Victor's mind stayed fixed on Maya Jackson and the debt he now owed her. The rain hadn't let up by the time Maya trudged home, her sneakers squishing with every step up the rickety stairs of her Harper Street apartment. The chill sank deep into her bones, a damp ache that matched the lightness of her pocket tips. From the diner, barely enough to cover rent, let alone groceries. She shut the door behind her, leaning against it with a sigh, rubbing a hand down her face. The one-bedroom was a cramped mess. Thin walls that carried the blare of her neighbors. TV, a heater that rattled more than it warmed. But tonight, her mind wasn't on the cold or the bills. It was on Ethan, that small grin when she handed him the cookie, the way he'd hesitated before leaving with that woman. Something about it gnawed at her, an unease she couldn't shake. She'd seen that kind of polished smile before, the one the woman wore. Too smooth, too practiced. It wasn't just a stranger picking up a kid. It was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Maya kicked off her shoes, pacing the tiny space. She'd learned long ago not to stick her nose where it didn't belong. Meddling got you. Burned in a neighborhood like this, but this felt different. Wrong somehow. Before she could dwell on it, a sharp knock jolted her upright. No one came by at this hour. She stiffened, peering through the peephole. Her stomach flipped. A man stood there tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black coat. That screamed money. The kind of expensive that didn't belong on Harper Street. His face was sharp, gray eyes cold and assessing, like he'd already dissected her before she even opened the door. Maya's hand hovered over the lock. "Who is it?" she called, keeping her voice steady. A pause. Then a deep, controlled voice answered, "Victor Grayson." The name meant nothing to her. "What do you want?" She pressed, fingers still. On the deadbolt, another pause. "To talk." Her gut screamed no, but curiosity tugged harder. Slowly, she unlatched the door, opening it just enough to see him clearly. He didn't fit here in this building. It's part of town, her world. The rain had left his coat damp, but his polished shoes gleamed spotless. This was power, the kind that could crush you without lifting a finger. "I don't know you," she said flatly, arms crossing. His expression didn't flicker. "No, but you know my son." Maya's pulse skipped. She studied him now, the way his presence filled the doorway, the faint lines of tension around his mouth. "Ethan," she said slowly, piecing it together. "You're his father." His nod was barely a twitch. "I was across the street last night." The chill in her bones sharpened. "You were watching." "I was." Victor's gaze held hers, unreadable. "I don't believe in charity, Maya, but I do believe in paying debts." Before she could respond, he stepped forward uninvited, but not forceful, and pulled an envelope from his coat. He set it on her wobbly kitchen table, the thick, creamy paper looking absurdly out of place next to her chipped mugs. Maya didn't move. She stared at it, then back at him. "What's that?" "A job offer," he said, his tone clipped. like he was stating a fact too obvious to explain. She blinked, her brain stalling. A what? Victor tilted his head slightly, as if gauging how much patience he'd spare her. A job at Grayson Enterprises. 6 figures. Benefits. The works. Maya let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You think I want to work for some rich guy who thinks tossing cash around makes us square? Victor didn't flinch. I don't think you want charity, Maya. That's why I'm not offering it. Her name in his mouth made something coil tight in Maya's chest. She folded her arms tighter, staring at Victor Grayson like he'd just sprouted a second head. You don't even know me, she said, her voice low, edged with defiance. I know enough, Victor replied, his tone steady, unshakable, like a man who never asked, only decided. I know you gave my son food without expecting anything back. I know you didn't treat him like a nuisance. I know that's rare. Maya swallowed hard, his words hitting something soft and unguarded inside her. She hated how they knocked against her ribs, how they made her feel seen in a way she hadn't asked for. She glanced at the envelope again, thick, heavy, the kind of paper that screamed money. 6 figures. Benefits. The works. It was ridiculous. A lifeline dangling in front of her, but it came with strings. She could feel them already, invisible. And binding. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Never owe these people anything, baby. They don't give without taking. Why me? She asked finally, lifting her chin to meet his gaze. You've got a company full of fancy suits who claw each other's eyes out for a gig like that. Victor's mouth twitched, something like amusement flickered and died in an instant. Exactly why I don't trust them, he said. They see numbers, leverage, power. You saw a kid. Her throat tightened. She hated how he made it sound simple, how he twisted her one small act into something bigger than it was. She just fed Ethan nothing heroic, nothing calculated. But here he stood, turning it into a debt, a transaction. She paced a step, the floor creaking under her bare feet, trying to shake the weight pressing against her. 6 figures. No more scraping by, no more counting coins for the electric bill, no more nights wondering if she'd make it to next week. It was freedom, or at least a version of it. But freedom from a man like this? That wasn't free. What would I even do? She asked, voice sharp. Pour your coffee? Smile pretty for your clients? Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't rise to the bait. You work with me. Negotiations, public relations. You're good with people. I need someone like that. Maya snorted, shaking her head. You don't need me. You've got Ivy League grads tripping over themselves to kiss your shoes. I don't trust them, he repeated, leaning forward just enough to make the air shift. They'd sell. Their souls for a bonus. You didn't even know who Ethan was. Silence stretched between them, heavy and taut. She could feel the offer curling around her pride, her exhaustion, her stubborn refusal to be bought. But 6 figures, it gnawed at her, tempting her to imagine a life beyond this crumbling apartment. Her jaw clenched as she stared at the envelope one last time, then slowly picked it up. The weight felt wrong in her hands, too solid, too real. I'll think about it, she muttered, barely above a whisper. Victor studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes piercing through her defenses. Then he gave a curt nod. Good. Without another word, he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. Maya stood there, the envelope still in her grip, its edges digging into her palms. She already knew she wasn't just thinking about it. She was going to say yes, and that scared her more than anything. The first day at Grayson Enterprises felt like stepping on to another planet. Maya walked into the towering glass building, her department store blazer stiff against her shoulders, thrifted heels clicking uncertainly on the polished marble floor. The lobby gleamed two bright walls of sleek metal and crystal chandeliers that screamed wealth in a language she didn't speak. Every pair of eyes snapped toward her as she crossed the space, their gazes not curious but calculating, sizing her up like she was a puzzle they hadn't asked to solve. She kept her head high, shoulders squared. She'd worked in places where people underestimated her before: diners, corner stores, late-night shifts, and she knew how to hold her ground. Victor was waiting in his office, a sprawling room with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a painting. His desk was pristine, more sculptured than workspace, and he didn't look up when she walked in, just gestured to the chair across from him. "You're late," he said, voice flat. Eyes on a stack of papers. Maya arched a brow, sitting down. "By 2 minutes." He finally met her gaze, his gray eyes sharp as knives. "That's 2 minutes I don't get back." She exhaled, shaking her head. Barely 5 seconds in, and he was already testing her. "Look, you want me here or not?" Victor leaned back, stunning her with that unreadable stare. "That remains to be seen." Before she could fire back, the glass door slid open, and Claire stepped in, a tablet in hand. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes flicked over Maya, assessing. Dismissive, like she'd already decided Maya didn't belong. "Miss Jackson," Claire said smoothly, her tone clipped. "Welcome to Grayson Enterprises." Maya met her gaze head-on, a slow smile curling her lips. "Oh, we're doing last names? Good to see you again, Miss Winters." Something flickered in Claire's eyes just for a second before she turned to Victor. "I've prepared the reports for the Sinclair Group negotiations." She handed him the tablet, barely glancing at Maya. "Would you like me to brief her on company protocols?" Victor didn't look up. "No, I will." Claire nodded, but hesitated at the door, glancing back at Maya. "Good luck," she murmured. It didn't sound like encouragement. It sounded like a warning. Maya didn't have time to dwell on it. Victor dove straight into work. No small talk, no easing in. He slid a file across the desk. "Sinclair Group," he said. "They want to push a contract that cuts labor costs by outsourcing overseas. That means layoffs thousands." Maya skimmed the file, her stomach turning as the numbers sank in: jobs lost, families appended, all for a fatter bottom line. She'd seen it before. Her mom's textile plant shuttered for cheaper labor, her neighborhood gutted by revitalization. She looked up, crossing her arms. "And you want me to what? Convince them not to?" Victor's gaze didn't waver. "I want you to do what you do best: read people." She sat back, eyebrows lifting. "So, you think I can charm these billionaires into growing a conscience?" "No," he said, voice cutting like glass. "I think you understand something." "They don't." Maya narrowed her eyes. "And what's that?" He leaned forward slightly, the air between them tightening. "That people with nothing to lose fight the hardest." The words landed heavy, striking something deep she didn't want to name. She stared at him, then exhaled sharply. "You talking riddles for a guy who runs a tech empire." For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched almost a smile, but gone too fast to tell. "Meetings at noon," he said, standing. "Try not to be late." The conference room was colder than the rest of the building, all steel and glass, designed to make you feel small. Maya sat beside Victor at the long mahogany table, facing 3 men in tailored suits, each one radiating the kind of confidence that came from knowing they could buy and sell lives with a pen stroke. The leader, Edward Sinclair, 60 with slick-back white hair, carried old money arrogance like a birthright. He barely glanced at Maya, his pale eyes skimming past her like she was furniture. She'd dealt with men like him before, ones who only saw value in people who mirrored them. She didn't let it show. Victor opened the conversation, cutting straight to it. "You want to move production to Taiwan. You say it'll save costs, boost efficiency. He paused, his voice steady. I say it'll gut a workforce that's built this company's backbone for over a decade. Sinclair gave a slow, thin-lipped smile that didn't reach his eyes. You misunderstand, Victor. It's not personal, it's just business. Maya's fingers curled beneath the table. Just business. She'd heard that line too many times when her landlord jacked rent overnight for development, when her mom lost her job to overseas factories, when companies like this raised communities and called it progress. She smiled, but there was steel in it. Funny, she said, tilting her head. It's always just business until it's your job on the line. Sinclair's eyes snapped to her, finally registering her presence. Victor didn't interrupt. He just watched. Sinclair exhaled sharply through his nose, like she was a mild annoyance. And you are? Maya Jackson, Grayson Enterprises, she said, unflinching. He gave her a once-over, as she saw the exact moment he wrote her off. She didn't care. She'd been underestimated before. He leaned back, waving a hand. Look, sweetheart, I get it. You think we're the bad guys. But this is about numbers. What makes sense? Sweetheart. Mayhay's jaw locked. She leaned forward, mirroring his posture. All right, let's talk numbers. She slid a document. Across the table, a breakdown she'd prepped with Victor that morning. You cut costs now, sure. But in 3 years, when labor demands spike in Taiwan, your new hub gets pricey. You'll spend millions restructuring, rehiring, and dodging PR nightmares when headlines scream American workers sold out for profit. She tapped the paper. That's not a hunch, that's market analysis. Sinclair glanced at the file but didn't touch it, his expression unreadable. Maya held his gaze, steady, unrelenting. You can make the smart call now, she said, voice calm but lethal, or explain to your investors why your quick wins cost them long-term gains. Silence stretched tight. Then Sinclair exhaled, picked up the paper, and skimmed it. Victor didn't smile, but Maya felt the shift like the air in the room bent in her favor. She just tilted the board. Sinclair set the document down, his face a mask. We'll revisit the proposal. Victor nodded. See that you do. The meeting wrapped shortly after, Sinclair and his suits filing out. Maya felt Victor's eyes on her as she gathered her notes. She turned to him. Well? He studied her for a long beat, then said, I knew I hired you for a reason. She smirked, tucking the file under her arm. Damn right you did. For the first time since stepping into Grayson Enterprises, Maya felt a spark of belonging, not just a guest in this gleaming world, but a player. She'd faced down Edward Sinclair and walked away with the upper hand. It wasn't a win yet, but it was a start. 2 months in, Maya thought she'd found her rhythm at Grayson Enterprises. She'd learned to navigate the polished halls of power, to stand tall in a world that barely acknowledged her existence. The victory over Edward Sinclair had been a quiet triumph. She'd proved she wasn't just a token hire, a corporate experiment. She belonged. But wins at the top were fleeting, and trouble was brewing faster than she could see it coming. Someone had just set her up to fall, and the noose was tightening. She'd just returned from a client meeting downtown, her blazer still crisp despite the long day, when Claire caught her in the hallway. We have a problem, Claire said, her voice sharp, urgent, her usual cool veneer cracking just enough to notice. Maya frowned, shifting her bag on her shoulder. Define problem. Claire didn't answer, just thrust a printed email into Maya's hands. The second she saw it, her stomach sank. It was a company report, classified financial data, projections, and internal budgets leaked to the press. Worse, the email forwarding it had her name stamped at the top. Maya Jackson, Grayson Enterprises. The words blurred as the air turned thick, heavy. She forced herself to breathe, scanning it again. This isn't mine, she said, voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. I know. Claire replied, her tone clipped but not accusing. But someone wants it to be. Maya's pulse thrummed in her ears. She'd been in enough tight spots to know how fast they spiraled. A black woman in a white-collar world didn't get the luxury of doubt. She was guilty the moment they said she was. "Who else has seen this?" she asked, gripping the paper tighter. "Victor," Claire said. "And the board." Her breath hitched. The board. She'd clawed her way into this company, and now they'd rip her out before she could blink. "Get me to Victor," she said, already moving. His office felt colder than usual, or maybe it was the way he looked at her when she stormed in, slamming the email onto his desk. He sat with his hands clasped, his gray eyes locked on her, unreadable but piercing. "Tell me I wasn't wrong," he said, low and controlled, like he was weighing her soul. "This isn't me," she snapped, leaning forward, hands planted on the desk. "You know that, right?" Victor didn't look at the paper. He didn't need to. "I want to believe that," he said, voice even. "But this is a serious leak, Maya. Millions in exposure, stock drops, investigations. You understand how bad this looks." She straightened, nails digging into her palms. "I understand perfectly. I also understand whoever did this picked me because I'm the easy target, right? The outsider, the black woman with too much nerve. Who's going to believe me over some exec who's been here a decade?" He didn't flinch, didn't argue. The silence stretched too long, heavy with unspoken truth. She paced, the click of her heels sharp against the floor. "Do you think I did this?" she demanded, turning back to him. Victor held her gaze, steady as stone. No. The breath she'd been holding slipped out, but he wasn't done. "The board does," he added, and her stomach twisted again. She swore under her breath, running. A hand through her hair. "So what now? They cut me loose and call it a day?" Victor exhaled, rubbing his jaw, a rare crack in his polished exterior. "We find the real leak." Maya froze, her eyes narrowing. "We? Not you. Not me. We." He stood, slipping his suit jacket back on with a fluid motion. "Claire's already tracing the email source, but it's routed through an external server. Someone covered their tracks well." She crossed her arms, leveling him with a look. "And if we don't find them? If the board decides I'm the scapegoat?" His jaw tightened, a flicker of something hard in his eyes. "Then we make them regret it." For the first time since she'd walked in, the ice in her chest thawed. Just a little. Victor Grayson didn't make promises, but she believed him. The truth unraveled faster than they'd expected. Maya and Claire worked through the night, hunched over laptops in a dimly lit corner of Grayson Enterprises, combing through server logs and tracing digital breadcrumbs. Whoever framed her had been careful rerouting the email through a dummy account, masking IP addresses, but not careful enough. By dawn, they had a name: Thomas Hargrove, a senior executive with 10 years at the company and a reputation for clean hands while others did his dirty work. Maya's blood boiled as she stared at the evidence bank transfers to a freelance reporter, call logs, a second email account tied to his personal phone. It was airtight. She stormed into the boardroom before they could summon her like a criminal, the air thick with tension. A dozen men in tailored suits stared her down from around the oval table, their polished faces radiating power and disdain. Victor sat at the head, his expression a mask, but his presence anchored her. An older board member with a thin-lipped smirk gestured to the empty seat across from them. "Miss Jackson," he drawled, "I assume you know why you're here." Maya didn't sit. She never planned to. "I do," she said, voice steady as steel. "And I assume you all know you're about to make a very expensive mistake." A murmur rippled through the room. The board member's smirk faltered, but he pressed on. "Miss Jackson, this leak." She cut him off, pacing deliberately as she dropped a thick folder onto the table with a thud. I was an easy target, right? The new hire, the outsider, pin it on me and sweep it under the rug. She stopped, sliding the folder toward them. Except you picked the wrong one. Silence fell as they skimmed the document's email traces. Bank records, call logs, all linking to Hargrove, not her. Their expressions shifted from smug to uneasy. Thomas Hargrove sat 2 seats down, his face paling, sweat beading on his forehead. These are traced emails, Maya continued, her voice cutting through the quiet. Payments to reporters, all from Hargrove's accounts. I've got copies with legal, and so does the press. If you want damage control, I'd start there. Hargrove shot to his feet, his voice too loud, too desperate. This is ridiculous. She's bluffing. Maya turned to Victor, lifting a brow. Am I? Victor's gaze flicked to Hargrove, cold and final. No, she's not. The words hit like a gavel. Hargrove's mouth snapped shut, his hands trembling. Victor stood, adjusting his cufflinks with calm precision. Effective immediately, Thomas Hargrove is terminated. Full legal action will follow. He let the weight of it settle, then turned to the room. And if anyone else thinks they can, play this game. Let this be your warning. The silence was deafening. Maya didn't smile. She didn't need to. She'd walked in as prey and walked out a predator. The board members shuffled papers, avoiding her eyes, their power deflated. Hargrove slumped back into his chair, defeated Dodd as the room emptied. Victor lingered, his gray eyes on her. You handled that well, he said, voice low. Maya tucked the folder under her arm, meeting his gaze. I handled it because I had to. Someone's always waiting to trip you up in a place like this? He nodded, a rare hint of respect in his posture. You're right, but you're still here. She smirked faintly. Damn right I am. The weight of the night lifted slightly as she stepped into the hall. Claire waiting by the elevator. Told you it wasn't you, Claire said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. Yeah, Maya replied, exhaling. Now we just gotta watch for the next one. Claire's smile faded, but she nodded. Maya knew this wasn't the end. Hargrove was just the first domino. Whoever wanted her gone wouldn't stop here. But she'd fought, and she'd won. For now, that was enough. 2 weeks after the boardroom showdown, Maya stood beside Victor at Ethan's high school graduation, the late spring sun casting long shadows over the crowd. Ethan grinned up at her from his wheelchair, clutching his diploma like it was a trophy, carved from gold. His dark hair was neatly combed, his blue eyes bright with pride. I told you I'd make it, he said, puffing out his chest, the old blanket replaced by a crisp black gown. Maya laughed, ruffling his hair until he squirmed. Never doubted it for a second, kid. She handed him a small sketchbook she'd picked up, a gift for the artist he told her about that rainy night. He beamed, flipping through the blank pages like they were already full of possibilities. Victor stood a step back, his usual cool exterior softened by the moment. He'd watched them, hands in his pockets, the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. You did good, Jackson, he said, his voice low enough that only she caught it. She smirked, glancing at him sidelong. Damn right I did. Ethan looked. Between them, his grin widening. Are you guys gonna hug or something? Victor sighed, a rare flicker of exasperation crossing his face. Absolutely not. Maya rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. God, no. Ethan just laughed, the sound light and free, cutting through the hum of the crowd. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she'd built something real, something that mattered beyond the gleaming walls of Grayson Enterprises. She'd come into this world a stranger, a diner waitress with nothing but grit and a good heart, and now she stood here, tethered to these two in a way she hadn't expected. Later, that afternoon, they drove across town to a ribbon-cutting ceremony, the air buzzing with anticipation. The Jackson Grayson Community Center stood proud, a low brick building with wide windows and a playground out back, funded by the company under Maya's push. It was her idea, a place for education, job training, a lifeline for kids from streets. Like Harper. She'd pitched it to Victor after the Hargrove mess, half expecting him to scoff. Instead, he'd nodded, handed her a budget, and said, "Make it work." She had. The crowd parted as they approached, Ethan wheeling ahead, Victor at her side. A local reporter snapped photos, kids in bright shirts darting around with balloons. Maya adjusted the mic at the podium, her thrifted heels steady on a platform. "This isn't just a building," she said, her voice carrying over the chatter. "It's a chance for every kid who's been told they don't matter, for every family fighting to get by. We're here because kindness isn't weakness. It's the start of something bigger." The applause rolled over her, warm and loud. Ethan whooped from the front row, waving his sketchbook. Victor didn't clap, but his nod was enough. She'd learned to read him by now. Years later, Maya Jackson sat in the executive office of Grayson Enterprises, her name etched on the door in sleek silver letters. Vice President of Corporate Strategy. The view from her window stretched over the city, a patchwork of steel and sky she'd once only glimpsed from Franklin Avenue. What started as a job, a challenge tossed at her in a rain-soaked apartment, had become a mission. Under her leadership, the company had shifted. Ethical labor initiatives rolled out, mentorship programs launched, partnerships forged with minority-owned businesses across town. She dragged Grayson Enterprises into a new era, kicking and screaming at times, but it worked. The Jackson Grayson Community Center had grown to now a network of 3 sites, each one a beacon for underserved youth. At its first ribbon cutting, Ethan had stood beside her, a college freshman then, grinning like the kid who'd once gotten a free meal at Franklin Glow. He'd sketched the building's blueprint on a napkin during a visit to her office, and she'd framed it, hung it behind her desk as a reminder. "Kindness pays off," he'd said that day, echoing her own words back to her. Victor had changed too, though he'd never admit it. He still ran the company with an iron grip, but he listened now, really listened, when she pushed back. Their arguments were legendary among the staff, sharp and loud, but they always ended with a plan. He'd even started joining her at the center's events, standing quietly in the back, watching kids like Ethan find their footing. Once, she'd caught him slipping a check into a donation box, unsigned, of course. She hadn't called him out on it. That morning, she'd gotten a call from Ethan, now interning at an architecture firm. "I'm designing a library for the center," he'd said, voice buzzing with excitement. "Gonna make it taller than Dad's building." She'd laughed, promising to clear her schedule for the groundbreaking dot back at Franklin Glow. The diner still stood older, creakier, but alive. Maya stopped by sometimes, slipping behind the counter to flip a grilled cheese for old time's sake. The neon sign still flickered, a stubborn glow against the dark. It was where it all started, one rainy night, one small act. She'd never imagined it would lead here. A corner office, a legacy, a family she hadn't planned on finding. Her phone buzzed. Victor, terse as ever. "Meeting in 10. Don't be late." She smirked, grabbing her notes. Some things never changed. As she stepped into the hall, heels clicking with purpose. She thought of that night, the rain, the boy in the wheelchair, the envelope on her table. Kindness had been her spark. The grit had built the fire. She wasn't done yet. There were more fights to win, more kids to lift up, more walls to break down. Grayson Enterprises wasn't just Victor's empire anymore. It bore her mark too. She pushed open the boardroom door, ready for whatever came next. The city sprawled below, and somewhere out there, Franklin Glow hummed on, a quiet reminder. It all began with a sandwich, a smile, and a debt that turned into something greater than either of them could have known.